Hey, what's up? I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it and give this video a like.
Podcast below in the description. Get on it right now.
Everything this week on our channel is brought to you by DraftKings. John, the Masters is here. You got to get in our game or just play DraftKings however you play DraftKings.
Download the app, promo code HAM.
Promo code HAM. Get you your shot at $1 million. Get in the Haberman and Middlecoff DraftKings League. We got a big game going. All right, Middlecoff, here's a comp for you. What do you think of Trey Lance, my NFL comp, what he could look like in his first 3 years? Josh Allen.
Here, my issue with the Josh Allen comp is Trey's one season, he was pretty accurate. Like Josh
I think
Allen,
that's the biggest nitpick of this comp.
To me, Josh Allen's the number one thing I think he was known for. Like, he had everything, right? His height, his character, his arm was like the modern day Jamarcus Russell. It was just like, why was he so inaccurate? And then clearly he's figured that out in pros. By his third year, he's a Pro Bowler and looks like he's a star. But that's where I'd nitpick, because I'd say there was one thing Josh Allen was known. It'd be like Steph Curry coming out. Everyone knew him for shooting threes, like coming out of Davidson. Josh Allen, when you just said Josh Allen around draft time, I give PMT some credit. Remember, there was like JoshAllen.com for number one to go number one overall. Like, the Pardon My Take guys had a big push for him to go number one overall. But the one comp that I've heard in NFL circles going around by a couple college directors was Kaepernick. And I think Kaepernick, like Derek, a modern-day Kaepernick, what he was doing would have been, with his physical attributes, his height, his arm strength, would have been viewed as a fringe top 10 pick. He might have been Trey Lance. But back then it was like running this weird offense. Now I think he would be the equivalent of what he did at Nevada, coming out with all the tools. No chance he goes early 30s, right? He goes top 12.
Yeah.
And when you think about Kaepernick, it was like, well, he's going to need some time. What do they say about Trey Lance? He's going to need some time. I actually kind of like the Trey Lance. And the Kaepernick thing has gotten weird. The thing he was known for coming out of college, like 4.0 GPA. People loved him at school. We were at Fresno State. I remember our pro day. I actually Instagrammed a picture the other day from that pro day. Anthony Harding was his high school teammate from Turlock. Kaepernick at the pro day came to Fresno. I think it might have been Nevada's spring break. Remember, he still had a year left. Like, on that pro day would have been in 2010. He had his 2010 season, went pro in 2011. I remember Kaepernick came back and, like, Coach Hill, like, pulled up the rope and, like, told him to get in here. And it was just like, he was one of the dudes. And I think he was known as a really, really high character. I'm not saying he's not a high character guy now. It's just gotten fucking weird with his life or whatever. But Kaepernick, I kind of like, I like the Kaepernick comp.
See, the reason I don't like the Kaepernick comp is because I think, as it
more
turned out, you had to change the offense for him, and you run in part what you ran in college, which was devastating.
But it's, yeah. Well,
whereas Trey Lance is running Trey Lance is doing Kyle Shanahan stuff.
I think part of the Kaepernick comp, though, is more body attributes and just the physical freakness.
See, again, I'll disagree there too. I think Trey Lance, from a freakness standpoint, yes. But I think Trey Lance, like Colin was a great, you always said, the straight line runner. He was not a great mover in the pocket. I think Trey Lance is a little more of a, like, break a tackle in the pocket, make a throw, not hit the whole run. I mean, he'll, obviously you can run with him effectively. Physically, he's thicker.
Where the Kaepernick comp would get nitpicked offensively was like, Kaepernick had no choice. His offense was, no one did that, right, in Nevada. Like, he was so unique that it was a hard transition. That's where this guy's going to transition. Like, they do more normal stuff. Like, they've always been known in North Dakota State.
Colin didn't throw with touch. Sorry, keep making that point.
Yeah, well, you compared him to Josh Allen, who didn't either.
That's true, but he has. Colin never developed it. Josh has.
Yeah, it's just an unknown. But a little bit like your Zach Wilson, there is a huge projection. Same with Kaepernick from Nevada. Same with Carr from Fresno State. That's the thing that Justin Fields, Mac Jones do not have, right? You'll never be like, oh, what are they going to look like against the best players? Like, oh, yeah, we watched them their entire careers.
Yeah.
Against the best guys.
Yeah.
Who's your Justin Fields comp?
Real quick on that, the other point on that is that part of that comp is I think he'll play kind of like him, just in terms of his physicality in the pocket. And I think his career trajectory might look more like his, right? Where it comes in and maybe it's 50, maybe it takes 3 years and you go, whoa, okay. I mean, you kind of saw it in year 2 with Josh. Well, I think that may be Trey Lance's. Maybe he's more accurate early, like you said.
Well, here would be my thing. The way Mel Kiper, who's on this podcast,
Mel
described Trey
Kiper.
Lance to
Oh
us
yeah. Mel on this podcast, right?
like a Kaepernick, like a Mahomes, needed a year. And whenever the needs a year comes up, I would say modern day. Back in the day, it was normal to sit forever, right? Even like it was normal when Carson Palmer sat for a year behind Kitna, let alone in the 90s. You're hoping that the development, like it's going to work. Like you can kind of mold him from scratch. Like when you hire an intern out of college, most people just watched enough like TED Talks on YouTube that these guys go like, listen, like I'm not expecting you if we're at Goldman Sachs to understand, everything that goes on in the finance world. We're going to teach you, right?
Right.
That's our job. We're just looking for someone hungry, someone we think has intellectual capacity, someone who's willing to work. And I think Bill Belichick would tell you the same thing about Josh McDaniels when he was 25. Like that's all anyone's looking for in young people. Same thing with these prospects. And it gets back to my initial talk about Mac Jones or anybody when they made this trade. Like there's so much unknown on whoever they get, what it's actually going to be like once you get a hold of them every day.
Yeah.
And I think that, whether it's Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, like I just think you have a lot of unknown with how it's going to react. Those two guys to like every day in practice, it's like, okay, Fred Warner is the guy covering your running back. Can you figure that out? Right. Like he's faster than any linebacker you've ever seen. Like that's who you're going to see every day. And like George Kittle is dramatically better than anyone you've ever played with. Like you have to lead him an extra 5 yards on just a shorter pass. You're used to like not even having to lead a guy because he's slow. Like it's just, and all of a sudden the first day it's really ugly. And you're like, no big deal. Like next day it's way better. Right.
Yeah.
But sometimes I bet half the guys the next day isn't way better. It's like, I'm overwhelmed. And that's what those two guys would make me nervous about the learning process. Like I would be fascinated over beers if you're just sitting there, and it might be hard because last year with Corona, the season was so weird. You didn't have any developmental time. But if LaFleur was here and be like, in your developmental time with Jordan Love, was it positive? Or are you sitting here today a little nervous? And he might say, listen, honestly, we were just so dead set on the season, we couldn't even fuck around with it. Or maybe he'd say, in the limited time we've had, me and Gudikins, we look at each other like, ooh, But they would always go back to this year, we're going to know a lot more.
Yeah.
But there is like, ooh. One of these guys, maybe both of them, wherever they go, are going to be like, ooh.
Well, see, that's where I separate Lance and before we get to Fields, where I separate Lance and Zach Wilson a little bit just because of Lance's physical size. Whereas if you misread Fred Warner, maybe Fred's tackling everybody. But I do think Lance might have a better chance at breaking a one-arm tackle. That's why I would lean with him.
I just know the way Zach Wilson played in college against me and yous, just throwing it around. It ain't going to be that easy in the pros.
No. But what would help him is if he's a little thicker, and that's why the Lance thing. If you're going to play that way, and not that Trey did, but if you're going to play that way, your physicality does come into play.
Well, that's where Zach Wilson, the car comp, like physically, there. I think Jimmy also is probably a pretty good comp too. That body type, that 6'2", 215.
Yeah.
Who, when you're around this, and we're lucky enough to have been to these practices and been to games on the sideline, like the Jimmys and the Derricks, when they walk out, do not physically look like Eli, Peyton, Tom, Phillip Rivers. Like those guys, when they walk by, you're like, is that guy a starting small forward in the NBA? Like they are massive, and that's not these guys. Like Zach Wilson's not like that.
No, but
now
I do
Rodgers
think Derrick
is not a
little
6'5" guy.
No, he's not. But I think Derrick, I think Derrick's a little just springier of an athlete than Garoppolo is.
He is.
Yeah. All right.
He's a better physical prospect than Garoppolo. It's probably why he went way higher than him. When I say way higher, like way higher in that round than Jimmy.